The survival genre is an interesting one. Whether you're avoiding zombies on Chernarus, taming dinosaurs on Genesis, clearing dungeons on Siptah, or scavenging on the island, the genre has always managed to draw a loyal crowd of overly dedicated, invested players. But why? What exactly keeps people hooked into this genre? Why do we play survival games? The reasons behind the appeal of the survival game genre are multifaceted, and undoubtedly the psychology of the genre plays a big part in the draw that many people feel towards it. Survival games have an implied danger to them, something I'll refer to here as the hostility factor. When we think of survival games, we think of two sides of the gameplay available. Firstly, we think of the idea of trying to survive in a tough, unforgiving world, working hard to gather resources and begin to settle within an untamed environment. This is an early game form of the hostility factor, where even though players know that surviving in the world will likely involve a lot of dying, and that it'll be a difficult and grindy task, the risk and reward trade-off of going from surviving to thriving is part of the deal. This early game progression is perhaps one of the biggest factors in hooking people into the genre. There are few things as satisfying as going from a tiny hut in the middle of nowhere to an established base, with crafting stations, food and water, animals, weapons and gear. This sort of very tangible and slow burn progression plays a huge part in making survival games appealing to people that enjoy being rewarded over a period of time, rather than immediately, and it provides a goal to aim for in a genre that quite often uses the sandbox format. Though the hostility factor during this point is incredibly high, as the player still hasn't learned how the environments and enemies work, the intrigue of not knowing is quite an enthralling feeling that is nearly impossible to recapture later on in the player's gameplay time. The second part of the appeal of this genre is of course interactions with other players. Ultimately, these interactions often end up becoming the end game of a survival title, especially for long-term players that have no issue going from fresh spawn to established within a very short period of time. Depending on your game of choice, these interactions and the way they occur will likely be different. If you're playing something like DayZ or Scum, you might be chasing the thrill of finding a couple of looted containers, leading you down a path of clues filled with open doors, empty food packets and dead zombies, until you finally lay eyes on the survivor you've been tracking. In Ark or Conan, you might find yourself running into survivors in the wild, and experiencing the mutual tension of being unsure whether you're going to talk, trade, fight, or just avoid each other. To a lesser extent, you've got lighter survival games like No Man's Sky, where seeing a player on another planet feels like a rare chance encounter amongst the billions of other planets in the universe. The aspect of danger, especially in the later game where PvP often becomes a big focus, is often exactly what keeps those dedicated players hooked in. Once you've experienced the rush of fighting to keep the loot you've earned, or of winning a hard clan fight and having the pleasure of looting the enemy base, it's really quite hard to find that same level of risk and reward enjoyment outside of the survival genre. The danger of PvP, the struggle of the early game, and the almost infinite amount of unique encounters that could potentially happen is often what keeps players hooked into survival games for a long time. But why? Well, it all comes down to possibilities. Whether it's realistic or not, survival games are full of possibilities. This point is somewhat anecdotal, but I suspect that I'm not the only one that thinks like this. When I used to load up Ark back in the day and log on to an official PvP server, it wasn't because I had the insatiable appetite to spend 8 hours taming a therizinosaur just to have it drown on my raft. Yes, I am still salty about that. Nor did I have the craving to spend half an hour farming meat to rot for narcotics. Instead, it was because of the potential of what could happen. Regardless of the game of choice, I think most survival players probably also dream of the potential encounters they could have, and all the interesting people they could run into. Getting kidnapped by a group of strange men in Scum, stumbling upon a well-hidden base in Ark, or trying to hold the line against a zombie horde in DayZ with someone you met 2 minutes ago, wondering during the fight if he's going to turn his gun on you after the horde is gone. Survival games have endless possibilities. Experienced players have undoubtedly had their expectations tempered over time. We all know that official PvP servers on almost any survival game are packed full of toxicity, but even amongst the squeakers, the ragers, and the offline raiders, there are interesting people around with interesting scenarios to offer. This endless potential isn't just unique to the survival genre though, and that is a huge reason why roleplay servers are so popular on games like Red Dead Redemption and GTA 5. These environments are designed to cultivate interesting interactions, and whilst not every server offers that great of an experience, there are a few things as satisfying as encountering someone that offers a scenario that is truly unique and interesting. This is why you also see a lot of crossover between survival games and the roleplay community, because it sort of satisfies that craving for really good interactions. The possibilities of survival games are truly endless, and it's one of those factors that has sort of an intangible quality to it. It's hard to exactly quantify why these potential encounters would be so enjoyable, but it plays a major factor in hooking people in and regularly bringing them back to the game. On the more psychological side of things, the survival genre hits a very masochistic note for many players. After all, why would someone choose to play a survival game? The learning curve is often a steep one, and the path to being comfortable is littered with death, loss, and plenty of hard work. Surely, it would just be more comfortable playing a game that offers a more relaxing and comfortable experience right out of the gate. Well, not necessarily. There is a time and a place for these relaxing games. As nice as it is to be able to sit back and enjoy a relaxing game that doesn't require too much investment, we as humans love a good bit of struggle. It's often been said that to truly enjoy the good things we have to experience the bad. There is little feeling of reward without struggle and labour to get there, and that is exactly why survival games hold a very masochistic appeal. Players know that they'll have to struggle to survive in a very unforgiving environment, but that struggle is exactly what will make the eventual reward all that much better. There is a balance to the struggle though. The struggle within the game must feel rewarding itself, offering a clear path of progression and a feeling of doing something regularly to the player. A great example of this is the progression tree within Ark. Almost every level you can unlock new items and get a glimpse of what you can unlock in the future. Even though you are destined to have to grind for those levels, it offers a bit more progression with every level and dangles the future rewards in front of the player, giving survivors a reason to keep playing and satisfying the balance of the struggle and reward. A bad example of this would definitely be, as much as it pains me to say it, Scum's building mechanic. Now, I really like this game, however, the building is painful, especially if you're a solo player. Scum is designed to be a hardcore, realistic survival game with all sorts of micromanagement factors, including keeping an eye on your metabolism, calorie balance, vitamins, etc. And the building system is also quite realistic, however it turns out to be a detriment to solo players. In most of the survival games, if you wanted to build yourself a cabin, you'd grab some wood, some stone, some other flexible materials, and you'd be able to craft the pieces in your inventory. If you want to build a cabin in Scum, you've got to grab your axe and deforest the nearby area, and then process the logs into planks, collect nails, craft rope, and slowly put those resources into the construction of your cabin. During this time your axe will undoubtedly break numerous times, you'll have to slowly lift and carry logs back and forth one by one, and it's just not a very rewarding system. With 3 or 4 players it's a much more manageable system, but it really feels dissuading for solo players and doesn't offer enough reward for the struggle you have to go through. Even just eating and drinking, the core tenets of a survival game, need to offer some degree of struggle and reward. If you've never had to struggle to find food or water, I don't think you'll ever truly appreciate your water filtration system and sustainable food options within your base in the late game. This is perhaps why shoehorned survival mechanics usually aren't well received in games where it isn't really necessary, as it tries to emulate mechanics from the survival genre without considering how they're made rewarding and to offer progression. The struggle and reward system is integral for survival games, and it satisfies the psychological urge to be rewarded for working hard. Finally, and perhaps the most important factor, is that survival games offer something different. There are countless shooters out there with bland backdrops of modern day conflicts, plenty of fighting games with fairly inconsequential arenas, but the environment you play in within survival games is just as important as the game itself. Trying to survive in a hostile environment, regardless of if it's a desert, a dinosaur-infested forest, a prison island in Eastern Europe, or even just a procedurally generated map, scratches that intangible itch to seek out environments vastly different from the ones we find ourselves in real life. That doesn't necessarily mean an environment is going to be a success in keeping the player there if it's completely unrealistic, of course. To keep things truly interesting, I think there needs to be just a small strand of familiarity within an otherwise alien environment. Perhaps this is a reason why games that offer environments that are familiar but are just outside of living memory are so popular. Titles like Red Dead Redemption 2 are insanely popular because its setting is compelling. Outside of the gunplay and the balance and the updates and all that, we are all familiar with the Wild West, the style and the common stereotypes of that era, but there is something captivating about sitting on your horse, trotting down the lantern-lit streets of Saint Denis at the turn of the century. That same feeling of being in a unique place at a unique time is similar in plenty of other survival games. There's something intangibly special about avoiding massive dinosaurs, quietly traversing a ruined city, or standing on a mountain high above the desert. Games that offer these unique locations and environments are often so different to what we experience in real life, but they have that single thread that keeps things relevant to real life, and that is what really makes the environments of survival games such an important factor for pulling players in. The survival genre has undoubtedly become oversaturated in recent years, especially back in the day with the hype of Minecraft, H1Z1, DayZ, etc. But I truly think that the survival genre offers something truly unique that your average AAA shooter just can't. It plays on the basic human instincts of curiosity, rewarding struggle, and a desire for danger, and that is what makes the genre so compelling. That is why we play survival games.